Let's get straight into it. We have a lot to unpack. How did you read into the Rwanda Arsenal deal? I was imagining it came as a surprise for most people outside the country. What was your read on it?
So for us, especially in Kenya, I mean, took us by surprise.
Right.
And I think it was a pleasant surprise because it just showed us that we need to up our game.
Yeah.
And I think Rwanda has taken a very bold move by signing up with Arsenal. It got different reactions from different parts of the world, as you know.
Right.
But sitting in Kenya, for us, I think that's an example we'd like to follow.
What about the aspect of the money that went into it? We would imagine other more advanced economies in the region would have pumped possibly the same amount or less, given the different budgets we have for tourism. What do you make of that?
Well, you'll see the results in a few years.
Exactly.
I think a sign, Arsenal, tying up with Rwanda, I think that's a fantastic success story.
Right.
So I think we're only going to see good things coming out of that.
All right, let's jump into Kenya now and what's been happening with the same. We've just come from a period of intense politicking last year. We're now seeing recovery in most of the sectors, but how soon can we start saying that we are on the path to possibly fruition of revenues or at least collection of the same?
Well, I think the most surprising thing for a lot of people is that Kenya last year did extremely well in tourism.
Right.
Despite it being a politicking year, despite the political uncertainty in the country, revenues actually increased by 20% in comparison to 2016. In 2016, the government raised about 100 billion shillings from tourism, and in 2017 it was 120 billion shillings from tourism. I think that itself is a positive indicator that, yes, it was a politically uncertain year, but tourism was still doing well.
Right. We had some reports come out on hotel occupancy rates. Kenya hotels recorded an average 48% occupancy last year, trailing the African average. Even as we see new establishments come up, this number could be a lot higher.
Yes, it can. And I think that's why, now you have the Kenya Tourism Board that has really stepped in. The Ministry of Tourism has stepped in, and they're really tirelessly working towards marketing the country as a destination, not just to the international markets, but to the regional markets as well. And I think we will see, improvements in occupancies because of their efforts. Right.
The same report also goes on to mention other countries around the region. We have Rwanda that has now, blown everything out. But the point even of some of the players here was that we still can't market the region as individual countries. It's impossible. I mean, we still have to rely on each other. But what are the aspects of reliance that we need to be very careful about?
Well, I think the first thing is that every country's got its strength. And I think if each and every country markets its own personal strength, then I think they're going to get tourism either way.
Right.
But I think a step ahead of that is, for example, the single African air transport market and the free movement of people across the continent. I think these are two panaceas for really getting us to have a unified tourism front.
Right. We've seen the Ministry of Tourism also being told that they need to cater, at least in the coast, they said a lot of that, cater for millennials. Yes. Now, in the past, millennials for local tourism, it has bore some fruit, but we still don't know how dependent we should be on certain revenue within that market segment. Just guide us through your views.
Well, I think first and foremost, the Minister for Tourism, Najib Balala, he had in February, spoken to a stakeholders symposium in Kenya, and he had said that our strategy now is digital marketing,
right,
and that is going to target the millennials. So he is looking with digital marketing, seeing an improvement of visitors from last year of 1.5 million to 3 million within the next 1 or 2 years.
Right.
And I think digital marketing is the way forward for tourism in our country, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen.
What remains the toughest, from a policy point of view, trying to boost our tourism numbers? What's the toughest conversation to have?
I think the toughest conversation to have is travel advisories.
Right.
I think travel advisories are what really set us back. But despite travel advisories, even last year, we saw such improvement in tourism last year.
Right.
So I think we've got a very positive story to talk about.
All right. We've been talking about this back and forth about the fact that within East Africa, we have a budget for everything else aside from tourism. That in itself presents an opportunity and also clear understanding that we still don't have a regional mentality.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah.
I would agree there, yes. But we do need to work towards it, and I think the fact that we are working in conjunction with private players, the Tourism Board and the Ministry, I think we are going in the right direction. We've
also been working on destination marketing. We've seen China as well pick up the conversation. Over 120,000 Kenyan passengers flown to Guangzhou since 2015. This as well is a key sense of our partnership and the kind of destination we should be looking at. Is there anything, what is your view on the outlook, near to mid-term, at least within passenger and destination marketing?
Well, if you're looking at Kenya alone, if we were on 1.5 million, last year, then we can expect to have about 1.8 million, which is what we had in 2011.
Right.
So I think we're going in that direction, and especially with all the efforts that are going in, I think we've got something really good to look forward to.
The hotel industry, a lot of money coming in, of course, capex and the issues on interest rates coming in for building up of these hotels. I mean, what's the way around in terms of corporations and the conversations that you have within your unions, leveling the base rates for some of these constructions and trying to make it as easy as possible for investors? What have you been discussing?
So first of all, the Tourism Finance Corporation has been in touch with most of the private players, and the main thing that they're talking about is that it is the ease of doing business. Bringing in investors to invest into hotels into the country is looking good.
All right.
Yeah.
In regards to matters on Kenya Airways, of course, I know you all read into it differently, but the fact that they've actually involved the banks and said, okay, now you can help us with financing. So what do you anticipate will come out of it from your perspective, and how soon?
So I expect there to be some good news in the next couple of months when it comes to Kenya Airways. I think they are slowly getting out of trouble.
Right.
At the same time, I think the single Air African transport market is really going to help Kenya Airways, because at this point you have got only 4 countries that have direct flights to 20 countries in the continent.
Right.
You've got Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, and Ethiopia. So I think with a little bit of help to Kenya Airways, I think they'll be back on board.